We are only a few days away from the full release of College Football 25, and I wanted to get you all on the right foot when starting your dynasties. And one of the most important things is to bringing in the top talent to your program. So today I will give you some tips and tricks on how to bring in the best recruits possible. And this guy, we aren't going to be focusing too much on choosing the top recruits since EA has mentioned that they will be patching this in the very first update that should be coming next week. We will highlight it briefly at the end. If you want to know about this, go ahead and check it out there. I really appreciate y'all being here and I hope you enjoy the video. And with that, let's get right into it. One last thing before we get into it, I did build these tips to work without using the recruiting backstory, but if you choose to use that, then you will get even a better boost to bring in guys to your campus. So we have taken the job at Georgia State, and we're not even going to spend any points to upgrade coaching skills. I just want this to be a level 1 guy. So you're going to come to this very first screen. The first thing you need to do is identify your top priorities. So you're going to come over your team needs, and this will showcase you what you need to bring in. So there's a bunch of guys here. Everything red is a guy you're going to need to bring in, and that's something you'll have to work through throughout the season. But what I'm meaning is that you want to identify your top priorities. So you'll have things like here, you'll need 3 different running backs. So if you look forward to, you only have 3 or 4 running backs on your roster, you're going to lose one next year. You probably really don't need 5 or 6 running backs on your roster at one time. I know for different playbooks you might need more, or it might say you need more, but right here you're going to probably only need 2 or even just 1. Same thing with left tackles, you're going to want to bring in at least 1. All these ones that say 1 on the list, you're going to want to bring in at least 1 guy, but those aren't going to be your top priority. It's going to be really, really hard for you to get more players at the same position just because if they have a playing time lock or whatever, they're going to probably beat out each other and then they're not going to come to your school. So you're going to want to really focus on the multiple needed per position, and then from there fill out the rest of your board with 1 to 2 guys per each position. Next up, I want to tell you all something to stick away from or steer away from. So you can see here on Sean Ring, he has a deal breaker. So deal breakers are things that recruits won't even come to you if they have the chance. I know he's a 5-star, but I need to showcase this. So if you come across a guy that has a deal breaker that's playing style, I would highly recommend staying away from that because playing style varies how much with how you play. So if you're running the ball a lot and you're trying to recruit a really good quarterback and his playing style is A+ at the beginning of the season, it's going to dip down a lot because you're not passing the ball the way he thinks he would want to come here in school. So instead of going for guys with playing style recommended or playing style deal breakers, go for guys that have deal breakers. So go for guys that have deal breakers like proximity to home or playing time. So playing time is really not going to change much season over season unless one of your guys just goes absolutely insane and gets a lot of points. But proximity to home will never change. This is going to stay stagnant the whole time you're at this school. Anybody in Georgia, if you're at school in Georgia, they're going to want to come to your school if they're a proximity to home deal breaker. And the benefit of this, exactly when one of their cells is when it comes to pitching and stuff. So that's a good thing to note and keep in mind as well. In this year's game, you have 35 scholarships you can fill per season. I would use near, if not all of them, because when you use a scholarship, especially in the preseason recruiting, it gives you a boost. That's the only way to get a boost when you're in the preseason recruiting and stuff. You can't go and add an action that's locked or scheduled visit or anything. Even though this guy's in his top 5, we could schedule a visit as soon as we get into the regular season. But the preseason, you are limited to just offering a scholarship. So you'll see over here next week, we offered a scholarship and we'll actually get a boost to the influence that we have with this player. And if the other teams haven't offered him a scholarship, we get a leg up on them. So this is really, really vital to offer pretty much all of your players on your list a scholarship, because if you don't want this guy towards the end of the season, if he's a bust or you just don't think he's that good of a player, you can always remove him for your list and he won't be able to commit to you if he's not on your list, even if you have offered him a scholarship. The only other option you have during the preseason is to scout players. It costs 10 hours per player to scout them, but the amount of scouting you get done per scout is different. So you can see here I just scouted Fernando and he went up 40%. This is because 1 or 2 reasons. One reason is going to be your coaches, your assistant coaches, and this is what I highly recommend when you get into the game. I didn't upgrade my coaches because I want to show you all a blank slate, but when you go in, you're going to have offensive and defensive coordinators, and they'll have different abilities themselves. So you can see here the offensive and defensive coordinator both have recruiting pools. You can't exactly see what the skills they have are on this, so it's kind of ambiguous, but you can tell they have invested some type of points into that system. The second option is if you are a really high pipeline tier. So you can see here we're at 2. I think it needs to be a 3-tier pipeline and you'll get a boost to your scouting. It'll take less time. So instead of taking 50 hours to fully scout a player, it's now going to take 30. And as you progress through the different tiers on different stuff, specifically if you're a recruiting guy, you're going to be able to scout guys faster and faster. I'm not sure if you'll be able to scout them in just 10 hours, but it might be something as small as 20. And one more thing before we move on from the preseason, I saw a video earlier today that's talking about you only want to use send the house pitch on the extreme on these players, but that's like really bad information. Once you get into the season, this will unlock and you'll be able to add actions. You can see in the middle section right here, you can DM a player, search at social media, contact family, friends, or send the house. Send the house costs 50 hours a week. It's the most expensive. It does give you a lot of influence with the player, but it's so expensive, especially for smaller schools. Once we get into the season, I think we'll only have 300 or 400 hours. If that's the case, then we can only, do 8 or 9 players a week. And that's all we can commit. We can't do anything else. We can't offer them a visit or nothing. So I think it's definitely bad info if they're telling you just to send the house. Maybe on a top 5 prospect or a 5-star prospect, but any of these other guys, you want to kind of mix and match depending, and we'll showcase that here in a minute. But now we've moved on to the regular season. So now you can see the top right-hand corner, we only have 350 hours instead of 450. You lose 100 hours when you enter the regular season because you don't have as much time to commit to recruiting. You have to coach. The other thing I want to mention here is that I didn't mention when scouting, you're going to have leftover hours after you offer most, if not all of your players a scholarship. So I would just use the remaining hours to scout the guys on your list that you're kind of deciding between. If you have 2 running backs that you really want, but you can only offer one because you only need one, or you think you can only offer one because you only need one, then I would scout between them and kind of figure out which one's better. Maybe one's a gem, maybe one's a bust, and you can remove them from your list. So going on to, the last 6 ones last 6 tips, we're talking about the preseason. Now we have entered the regular season, like I was mentioning. And the one thing I want to point out before we get into the rest of it is we offer this guy a scholarship. Nobody else did. And look, we jumped from 4th to 1st place. And you can see the green little up arrow. We moved up 3 spots and everybody else fell 1. And this is because we offered them a scholarship right out of the gates. And we were able to get a little bit of influence on this player. And you can see it varies depending on the player. So you can see here, Timmy Bale, even though they're both 1-stars, he gets a lot more influence than we did with Fernando. And there's probably various reasons for this, but it's kind of behind the scenes. It depends probably a little bit on your playing style, how they fit with your position. And you can see here on Ross Fair, UAB also offered them a scholarship, and so we're both in the running for this player now. So the next tip is going to be always keep looking at prospect lists. Your prospect list will be filled with more guys as the season goes, depending on various reasons. Right here you can see this linebacker. We didn't offer him at the beginning of the season because he wasn't on our list, but miraculously somehow he is now. You can see we offered all these guys in a row. We didn't skip anybody, so he just got miraculously added to our list. The CPU or the AI think we need him now. You can see he's been offered by Vandy and Duke, so you probably don't want to go for that guy. You probably won't go for any of these guys, but as you progress through the season, they're going to keep adding different guys to your list. So always keep looking, because you might be able to get a guy who has been offered some stuff, and you might be able to pick him up later into the season. To keep it going, next we're going to try to focus on how to rearrange your points. So recruiting this year is going to be a lot of micromanaging. You don't have to micromanage, but it'll save you maybe not a ton of time, but it'll save you about 5 to 15 hours per player. So you can see Fernando here, he's going to be our example for most of the stuff. You can send the house, which gives you 5 ticks of influence for 50 hours. But if you go down here to hard sell, you can get the same amount of ticks, 5 ticks, but only 40 hours. So you're saving 10 hours. So if you can get the players to top 10, then you'll be able to reduce your 5 ticks of influence by 10 hours, which if you do this for 5 guys, that's 50 hours. It's another guy you can basically offer a full send the house to if he's not in your top 5. Or if he is, you can give him another pitch, and you'll still have 10 hours left over. And that's 10 hours you can use to scout, or you can use to give a smaller pitch to guys. You can use to DM a player or search 2 players on social media. So it's really, really important for you to always micromanage your different prospects. But next up, we have scheduling visits. This is going to be a hefty task on you. It costs you 40 hours a week. 1 week, though. It doesn't cost you 40 hours every single week. It's just the first week you schedule, it costs you 40 hours. You can see we only have 350 hours available to us every single week. Those will gain as you get prestige and your coaching gets developed if you're in recruiting, the backstory. But if you're not in that, you're just a basic generic guy, especially your first few years, your scheduling visits are going to be really, really a pain in the butt. So I recommend not doing this unless you absolutely have to. I wouldn't really do this for any 1 to 2 star players, mostly because those guys, if they're going to be influenced by you enough, are going to come straight to your school. They don't really need a visit, especially if nobody else is competing for them. You'll be able to kind of identify that. Fernando was in his top 5 really early on in the season. So this is typically not the case. You'll typically have guys that just got past their top 8 or are getting into their top 8, like Ross Fair here. So it'll be sometime. You'll probably be around week 3 or 4 before you get to his top 5 and you're able to offer him that. So I would keep these for very specific scenarios to offer guys that, you know, you may be competing with, such as Ross Fair, if we're, you know, 3-4 weeks in the season and we're competing with UAB and only UAB, and since they're a smaller school like us, I would probably offer him a visit if we wanted to bring him to our school. So Ross Fair here isn't the best player in the world, but he is a 2-star, so I'm sure more people will want him than 1-stars. So one thing you're going to want to keep to notice is teams that are coming up on your tail. So you can see Ross Fair has Florida on his top 5 teams. So if Florida, for some reason, gains half a bar of influence with them, you're going to want to cut ties with them immediately, because you're not going to be able to compete with Florida. If they offer him a scholarship, it's pretty much over, because I mean, what kid wouldn't want to go play at Florida? Even if you're sitting on the bench, you might get a player senior year. You could always transfer and stuff like that. So whenever you notice that a top team is gaining on you, you're probably going to want to cut ties right away, unless you're right at the finish line and you think something you can do will push them over the edge. But 99% of the time, you're not going to be able to beat out a Power 5 program. So this last tip, not really a tip, I just want to take a moment to tell you all that this is a little bit different than NCAA 14. If you've played that game, you can basically fill out your recruiting board by week 6 and have 30 guys on there that you're bringing in next year. This game is completely different. You could be in week 7 and only have 1 to 2 guys, maybe 0 guys committed to your team, and that is completely okay. Don't worry about it. Don't fret about it. If you don't have guys in like top 3 area, maybe you need to start worrying about it. But at that point, you'll have teams, guys in their top 3, top 5. You'll be gaining a lot of influence with different guys. So don't worry about it. It's about week 10 to week 11 is when you're starting to see 3 or 4 commits per week. And then early signing days right after the season, and you'll see some more guys commit there. But then full signing day is like way past the college football playoffs. So you still may see a couple guys trickle in even after the transfer portal. So I did promise you I would talk about the cheese part of this game in recruiting. I would highly recommend not really diving too far into this, just because EA has said they're going to patch this as soon as they can. But you can see here, Mr. James Biggs. This is what you don't want to do this before the week 1, but you know, in the preseason, you're going to want to look here and look at your 4-star players. 5 stars you can too, but typically they're harder to get. Your 4-star is probably going to be the best you can get regularly. But you can look at James Biggs. He doesn't have a deal breaker, so that's a good thing. Or he does have a deal breaker, sorry. It is playing time, so that's perfect for us. And you're going to want to come over here and look at offers. He doesn't have any offers from the top team. So if he doesn't have any offers, you want to put in him here, and you want to go ahead and offer him one as soon as possible. It may make more sense to wait till week 1 because the guys aren't there. But if you want to try to get as much influence, you want to do it before week 1 in the preseason. But you want to offer him one. We'll go ahead and add him to our recruiting board. We're going to head over and look at him. So you can see here, we're going to go ahead and offer him a scholarship if we can get there. And you don't want to recruit these guys. You know, a 4-star guy, even if he's a bust, is still going to be a 3-star guy. So you don't even want to recruit him. And then you're going to go immediately and put in send the house. Those are the 2 things you need to do if you really want to try to get 4 to 5 stars. It's not going to work every time. It'll work about half the times, maybe a little less. But even if you have 10 guys on your board that you can bring in, if you bring in 4 of them, 4 4-stars is really good. If you can do that every single year, that's 16 4-stars on your team after year 4. And you're going to be a top team in your conference, especially if you start at a smaller school. So this is stuff, but again, I want to highly say that this should not be your strategy going forward, because EA is going to patch this. They have already mentioned it. They put it out on multiple videos and stuff like that, that they want to remedy this, because 4 and 5 stars should not fall through the cracks. And that was all the tips we have for you today. I appreciate y'all tuning in, and I hope this gets you started on the right foot in your very, very first dynasty when you all get the game. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was valuable knowledge to you. Also stay tuned, as I will be dropping transfer portal tips and a video coming in probably this weekend or next week. I haven't played through it myself, so I didn't want to give you all tips and tricks on something I haven't even touched yet. If you wouldn't mind, drop a like and hitting that big red subscribe button. It really helps out the channel immensely. And if you want to comment down below, it really helps the algorithm as well. We are trying to get to 500 subs, and I would really appreciate if you would join us along the way. So I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope to see you in the next one.